It's worth remembering that the former senator from Delaware is partly responsible for some of the worst aspects of today's criminal justice system.
It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street.
There are other measures to stop transferring weapons of war to police forces, improve oversight and accountability.
Let the FBI agents buy weapons as powerful as the drug cartels had. They're getting beat up.
The president might also want to open the U.S. Constitution once in a while. If he did, he'd find a thing called the First Amendment.
There's a thing called the First Amendment, which is read in a way that I think is a little excessive.
From the crack epidemic of the 80s to the crime wave of the 90s to the post-9/11 war on terror, throughout his career, Biden has represented the Democratic Party consensus, shifting his views to fit whatever best serves his own political career. Over his 44 years in the Senate and then as vice president, Biden was a leading architect of today's criminal justice system, which contributed to mass incarceration and the police misconduct that protesters are fighting back against today.
Biden crime bill, the Biden crime bill.
The Biden crime bill.
Hell, we've had crime bills coming out our ears. Every major crime bill since 1976, every minor crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden. You got a gun, you commit a felony, 10 years. We already have it 5 years. Minimum mandatory. Judge can't say, you know, you had it in your pocket, you never intended to use it, we're only going to give you 1 year. Judge has to say 5 years. Well, he wants to make it 10 or 20 or 60. We can work that out.
He wanted to remove judicial discretion for those who, quote, don't meet the middle-class criteria of susceptibility to rehabilitation.
They are beyond the pale, many of those people. They literally have not been socialized. They are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families.
The Biden-Thurmond Violent Crime Control Act of 1991 would have increased the maximum sentence for 44 crimes to include the death penalty.
A wag in the newspaper recently wrote, Biden has made it a death penalty offense for everything but jaywalking.
Republicans one-upped Biden by adding 46 capital crimes.
I'm going to make it for 46 crimes. Biden says make it for 51. We're going to get tough.
So he proposed 53. Then he presented the final version of the legislation.
60 new death penalties, brand new, 60. There are 70 additional enhancements of penalties, i.e. you go to jail longer.
After his disastrous 1987 presidential campaign, Biden had staged his political comeback, in part by becoming a media darling on issues of policing and crime, and he led the fight to pass the landmark 1994 crime bill under Bill Clinton.
When I wrote the original bill that started this whole process, the so-called Biden crime bill, I didn't call a liberal confab and write it. I didn't call any big society people and write it. I called the cops.
A Democratic president wants 100,000 cops. A Democratic president wants to build 125,000 new prison cells.
That's the secret. That somehow the Republicans tried to make the crime bill tougher. I say poppycock. They didn't make anything tougher. I wrote that bill.
He convinced Republicans to support urban community programs as a way to keep inner-city kids away from respectable families.
They started looking at it and found out that this midnight basketball isn't getting them together, a bunch of jive folks who are black, white, and Hispanic, who live in their city to do, try to see if they can be Michael Jordan. When they found out, they were keeping schools open. So gangs come off streets instead of out raping my mother, marauding me, robbing the local store. They're in a gymnasium, and my daughter will be safer, my wife will be safer, my mother will be safer, and I will be safer. And I will be happy.
Never again should Washington put politics and party above law and order.
Along with several laws passed in the 80s, the 1994 crime bill drove up the local, state, and federal prison populations, and it tarnished the reputations of Biden and Bill Clinton, who signed it into law.
Hey, Clinton! You didn't want to take pictures with my people here? We're still in jail for what you did!
When Biden ran for president in 2008, he told the New York Times that he knew more people would be locked up across the board, but that it would drive down crime. In fact, crime rates were already falling when Biden pushed for the passage of the '94 crime bill, and they have continued falling as the prison population has declined in recent years.
You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. In fact, I drafted the bill. We had enormous success.
The mass incarceration created by Biden's lock-em-up policies ripped apart vulnerable communities and families for a generation, and the federal funding streams and law enforcement infrastructure it created continue to hinder reform efforts.
There are things I would change, but by and large, what it really did, it restored American cities.
Go inside now! Get in the house!
The younger generation now tells me how tough things are. Give me a break. No, I have no empathy for it. Give me a break. Because here's the deal, guys. We decided we were going to change the world, and we did. We did. We finished the civil rights movement to the first stage. The women's movement came into being. So my message is, get involved. There's no place to hide. I'll do my job and I will take responsibility. I won't blame others. I won't traffic in fear and division. I won't fan the flames of hate. I'll seek to heal the racial wounds that have long plagued our country, not use them for political gain.